has tonight come under sharp criticism after a video emerged of the county enforcement officers dragging a woman across a tarmac strip. The woman, identified as Beatrice Magolo, sustained injuries on her legs and arms, with a section of leaders calling for immediate action from the city inspectorate. Let's get more from our very own Laura Otieno.
The clip that sparked outrage on social media today. In broad daylight, 39-year-old widow Beatrice Magolo was dragged on the tarmac at a 500 meters distance by county enforcement officers who found her hawking lemons. The mother of four narrating the hell that the officers put her through.
Today I want to talk about that video you just saw. I mean, did you see the absolute brutality of the way they treated that woman? Can you imagine the level of hatred that these cops had in order to drag a woman behind a moving car? I mean, what kind of person does that? But here we are not here to discuss the particular person who dragged that woman, because this is larger than that incident. I mean, that incident is simply the tip of the iceberg. So basically our interest is to examine the psychology of brutality that Africans have for other Africans. See, he would never do that to an Indian. He would never do that to a Chinese. He would never do that to a Mzungu. But he can do that to an African. So it's an indication of how much Africans hate themselves. As you very well know, many Africans have an inferiority complex, because we live in the economy of I hate to use this term because I've heard it being used, but I'll use it because it captures some of what I want to say. We live in a psychological framework of white supremacy, and that is very much in force in Kenya, whereby the Mzungu is God. The mental frames of reference for the Kenyan man is framed by the idea that the Mzungu is God. So you wonder, what does that have to do with this incident? Well, it has everything to do with this incident, because in this I don't know, psychological house, I know I'm not using the correct term, like in this psychological framework in which we live, this mental world in which we live, you know, think of it like a video game. If you've ever seen a video game, you enter into a world, a different world, right? It's a mental world. The video game doesn't exist in real life. It's all in your mind. So you enter into this world, and it has rules, it has regulations, it has laws, it has what you're expected to do, the expectations that the video game creator has put into that world that you're stepping into. And according to the rules that they've created, you either win or lose. Now, in Kenya, it's like a simulated reality. It's like a giant video game. And the creators of the video game is the Mzungu. And within that world, he is God, right? The minute you step into that world, there is a God, and the God is the Mzungu. He's created the framework, and he's the God of that world in a very real sense, because if you go to the temple, you're worshipping a statue of a Mzungu, right? So some of the rules of this world is all love, all adoration, all glory goes to who? Goes to God. But God is a Mzungu. Are you seeing? So for the African man who is living in this framework, this mental framework, all love, adoration has to go to who? Has to go to the God who's the Mzungu. Which means, in the reverse, all hatred, contempt, aggression, brutality has to be directed to who? To the African. Because in this mental world, everything that is good is Mzungu. Everything that's bad is African. He would never do that. He would never drag a Mzungu woman behind the pickup truck. He would never do that, right? We all know that. Why? Because in that world, you cannot do that to God. Essentially, that's what we mean. And ultimately, this is the issue of the self-hatred that Africans manifest towards Africans. The extent of brutality that Africans display towards other Africans can clearly be seen in this situation. And so, ultimately, the issue here is not necessarily police brutality. The issue is why and at who is that brutality directed? So it goes back to that mentality of self-hatred. And the level of hatred is so bad that now it's a human rights issue. Africans violate other Africans horrifically. I mean, the stories that come out of Kenya sometimes are just shocking. And by comparison, I can give you many comparisons of whereby Europeans commit crimes in Kenya and such a thing never happens to them. Whatever crime they commit, they can get away with it. Right? But this lady, I think her crime was, according to the video, was that she's a hawker. She's poor, she's a peddler. And so already she's very poor, having to live the life of peddling things. And she was peddling at, I guess, the wrong place. And this is the official response of the government, to drag her behind a pickup truck. Yet last week there was a European woman, a Mzungu woman, who was accused of raping I think 2 boys. And the last I heard about it, she hasn't been arrested at all. So you can rape 2 boys and not get arrested, but if you peddle in the wrong place, you'll be dragged behind a pickup. So that tells you the thinking of the Kenyan man. It tells you the self-hatred and the self-violence and contempt for self. Because when they were doing this to her, they were doing this to their daughter, they were doing this to their own mother. It's the same thing. It's hatred for self. And you can see the extent to which Kenyan men hate themselves. The more violence you see being meted out to the population by the government, it's an indication of the depth of hatred that they have for their own population. So they hate themselves and they worship the foreigner. So our interest is in studying the psychology of self-hate, and to ask Kenyan men, for how long will you despise yourselves? How can you do that to yourselves, to your own? See, the African man never defends himself, never defends his woman, and never defends his children, ever. And that's why if tomorrow gold is discovered in Kenya, the government will immediately hand over that mine to foreigners, immediately. It's also a function of self-hate. And so we see the economic impact of this self-hate is that when you despise yourself to this extent, and you hate yourself to this extent, and you're trying to destroy yourself to this extent, you can never innovate anything for yourself. Because the minute one of your people innovates something, you immediately despise it because you despise them. So if they invent something, you totally ignore it, and you never promote it, you never buy it. So our interest is in not necessarily even the human rights violations that occurred in this case, but the economic impact of the psychology of self-hatred as manifested by these Kenyan men dragging this woman behind a moving pickup. It speaks volumes, and it's typical, and it's time it stopped. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and comment below. Kenya's time has come. Our time has come. Your time has come. A time to succeed and not fail. A time to grow wealth and not poverty. A time to go up and not down. It's time for you to stop walking and drive your car. Stop renting and buy yourself a house. It's your time to get blessed. Join the CCV movement and together let us kick poverty and unemployment out of Kenya. Become a member today. Donate what you can. And remember that the CCV is the only political organization in Kenya that is squarely built upon Christian values, unlike the rest. We'll see you next time. Thank you.